This is Ashwin, and do like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of DRS with Ash. And today I'm joined by none other than the original Little Master that we've all heard of. My father was a big fan of you, Sunny Bhai. Thank you so much for joining me on the show and gracing the show, actually.
Thank you. My pleasure. My pleasure. How's your father?
Yeah,
is he a little disappointed you're an off-spinner and not an opening batsman?
In all honesty, he is, actually. At least he's coping up with my cricketing career a lot better than what he used to, Sunny Bhai. Sunny Bhai, I have this very interesting question that I've always wanted to know. Bombay has got this rich legacy of cricketers, right? Especially when it comes to batsmen. Sunil Gavaskar, Sachin Tendulkar and Rohit Sharma. There is a lineage there, right? But who was that motivation for you from the Mumbai or the Bombay school of culture for cricket for you?
Well, I think you've got to go back to Vijay Merchant. He was, India's most technically accomplished batsman at that particular point of time, scoring hundreds, double hundreds, triple hundreds. And so he certainly was somebody that I wanted to, bat like, to emulate. Obviously, you couldn't bat like Vijay Merchant, but if you could get somewhere close, then that would be a big plus. And after that, of course, there was Vijay Manjrekar, Paulie Umriga. So there are lots of batsmen who you could learn from. And I have to say, at the start of my career, all these names were absolutely magnificent. The way they came and helped me, Vijay Merchant in particular, was fantastic. He was the chairman of the selection committee when I was picked for the first time to go to the West Indies. And as the chairman of the selection committee, and if I remember rightly, he was also the president of the Cricket Club of India.
Right.
Then at the Cricket Club of India, the meeting room for their executive committee was where he had called the Indian team to on the day of their departure. We were leaving at night, and so during the day he called us for a meeting. And at that meeting, he sort of singled me out and said that I expect great things from you. And I'm saying hello. But there are so many other stalwarts sitting there. I'm just going on my first trip. I want to make sure that I don't make a fool of myself. That's about it. I didn't want to do anything. If I didn't make a fool of myself, I would have been very happy. So yes, I think Mumbai has got a tremendous lineage of batsmen, and so clearly it was easy to sort of learn from them.
You said it very humbly, I must say, because it's definitely not easy. We've heard about, I've seen my father speak about very highly of the West Indian pace attack, right? We're talking about Michael Holding, Andy Roberts. There are a lot of people that tell you that Sunil Gavaskar without the helmet went out and, faced these bowlers. And it was so much grace, so much elan. But what strikes out for me as a cricketer currently playing and practicing is the fact that India never had anything similar to what West Indies was throwing at you in a game. You are probably facing the spin quartet ahead of facing these quick bowlers. There were no bowling machines, no throwdowns that you see nowadays. Yes. How was your practice like, Sunny Bhai? How did you manage to do that?
Well, I had the Mumbai bowlers, the Ranji bowlers, bowl from 18 yards instead of the regular 22 yards. I made them bowl. Look, in the nets, generally, most people overstep. They're not as particular as they would be in a match, because in a match now, and particularly in the T20 format, the no ball is followed by a free hit. So you really can't afford to bowl a no ball. But in those days, even in the nets, nobody really bothered. And so 18 yards was the way they bowled. But while it helped in terms of the ball coming onto the bat, the speed, the bounce was always going to be the question. And so for the bounce, what I did was on the backside of the Cricket Club of India, where there's a walking track on the backside underneath the stands. And there it's a concrete stand. So there I would have sometimes, not regularly, because people would be walking there, but I would have somebody, wet a tennis ball and throw it at me hard, so it would come at me quick and at a height. So it sort of helped you to, negotiate the bounce as well. So those were the two things that I tried to do to try and get used to the extra pace and bounce that you would find when you played overseas.
Wow, that's. Still we end up doing a lot of wet tennis ball drills even now. Things haven't changed. But tell me something, Sunny Bhai. The game then wasn't exactly like how we are all privileged to play today, because I believe what you people left over then is why we are all benefiting today. But without so much money in the game, not necessarily making a career out of the game, how did you like basically motivate yourself to do such innovative things to still stay on the top? It must have been quite a challenge, right? You wanted to be excellent, but how did that mindset come?
Well, first and foremost, you know that when you play for your country, there's no greater incentive than that. And when you do well for your country and then you get the, you know, the applause of your countrymen, I mean, that is the greatest, thing that you can ever get. Like I keep saying, the adulation or the affection that you get from the cricket-loving public is your greatest wealth. I mean, you could be, you know, having millions in the bank, but if you don't have that wealth of affection from your fellow countrymen, then that is no good. So when that is an incentive, then you try and do things so that you get better. And for me, it was always trying to learn from the mistakes that I had made earlier on. For me, the incentive was to try and, you know, have India's flag flying higher. We were a generation which was born after the independence. Right. So while the generation before us, those of us, some of who were born before the independence, they still had a few reservations. But I think from 1970s onwards, and I say that with no disrespect to the earlier generation, but from the 1970s onwards, you know, our generation started to assert itself a little bit more. We were not looking away when an overseas player talked to us. We looked him in the eye. Most of us looked him in the eye. We didn't look away. We had no complexes. And I think the fact that, like I said, there is this whole, you know, country that is waiting and praying for your success, that is a huge incentive. I mean, when I was a captain and when we played in Australia, what I would be saying to the players was, listen, guys, by the time the match ends, it's going to be 9:30, 10 in the morning in India. We do well, it's going to be a great productive day. People are going to work like mad today because they are happy. But we do badly, then, you know, you're going to have, you know, the people who are going to be disappointed. They're going to be, you know, dejected that we haven't done well. And obviously it doesn't mean the whole country, but those who follow the game of cricket, that could be, you know, few, not millions.
Sunny Bhai, you mentioned about people who had played pre-independence and how they were a little, you know, hesitant to take people on and all that. And rightly so, right? Because their mindset was such. And even now, like when I started playing cricket, people were constantly, you know, double guessing when you did something that's different. Like if you were different, they'll frown upon you and say, you know what, it's not broken. Why fix it? In a mindset that's come a long way beyond the 20th century, the 21st century, you played left-handed against Karnataka in a Ranji Trophy game.
Yeah.
Can you tell me something about it? Did you have anyone, like, not forget about anyone, any well-wisher come up to you and say, hey, what are you doing? It might spoil your game, because that was very natural then, right?
Actually it was quite funny because on day one, Raghuram Bhatt was turning the ball square and I was batting on 40 something in the first innings, and I got out to him, played forward, ball turned, and Bishit caught me in first slip. So when it came to day 4 of the semi-finals, and we were facing defeat at that stage, and so I said to the manager, who was a former Mumbai player, I said, look, I'm going to bat left-handed. He said, no, you can't do that. I said, look, if I bat right-handed, I have no chance. He's going to get me in a few deliveries, because, you know, the ball's spinning and the ball turning away from you is more likely to get you out. And so he said, no. But eventually, I because I was a captain, I went and had my way, because I knew that playing left-handed, I would play where the ball landed. As a right-hander, where you're a little more accomplished and you're a left-hander, you anticipate the turn and your bat goes according to the turn, and therefore there is more chance of the bat meeting the ball or the edge of the bat meeting the ball and you getting out. As a left-hander, which I'd never ever done even in the nets before, or even in my house before, I said, let me go and try that. And that's exactly what happened. I was playing where the ball was pitching, ball was turning and then hitting me in the side or hitting me on the thigh pad. And so that's it. That's how I survived playing. I mean, Raghuram Bhatt, and then there was another leg spinner, or left-hand spinner, he bowled. And that's how I batted. But, you know, at that particular stage, there was a lot of people who thought that I'd done it out of pique, that because Mumbai had lost that I was, but it wasn't. It was purely and simply a tactical thinking. What you call nowadays, it's called out of the box thinking. So in those days, I just said, let me try. Having said that, let me tell you, if it was playing for India, I wouldn't have done that for sure. But here the match was gone. We had no chance. It was a matter of just trying to survive an innings defeat, and that's what we did.
Right. You said out of the box thinking. For some people, out of the box thinking is pretty simple. For others, it might not be so straightforward, which is something that I constantly believe. What I feel is possible might not be the same for another person. But Sunny Bhai, out of an inquisitive thought process, I'm asking you as a bowler or as a batter, where were your scoring options as a left-hander? What was your go-to shot?
I didn't have any scoring options. I was only looking to maybe, if in case the ball came to me, just flick it around to square leg or deep fine leg for a single. No question. But the only thing I did after that, because after that there were some photographs that appeared, and then I had those photographs, and I used to tell my son, Rohan, who was the left-hander, and I used to always tease him, my stance is any day better than yours.
Typically, so I think you can pull the leg of most batsmen in the country, and I mean, this is fabulous, Sunny Bhai, listening to you. Tell me something, taking you back a little further. I read somewhere that you were changed. I mean, you were the baby was swapped in a hospital, and you were supposedly misplaced on the next morning, and then your uncle found out, Mr. Madhav Mantri. He found out, and then he swapped.
It was not Madhav Mantri. It was Narayan Masurekar, who's my father's cousin.
Right.
And so what had happened was, on day one, I think he had come to see my mother, and my mother was in a general ward, where there are other beds as well, not a special room. So he picked the baby up, and as you know, the babies are all wrapped up, and that's only the face can be seen. So while seeing that, he saw that I had a hole over here, and so he came to visit my mother a few days later. And when he picked the baby in the crib next to my mother, he saw the hole wasn't there. And the babies had just been given a bath. And because it was a general sort of, a place where there would be a general ward. So I think the nurses accidentally, misplaced while they were putting the babies. So I was put in a crib next to a fisherwoman. Some other baby was put in my mother's crib. So that's how the mix-up happened. And so they went around the entire ward, crib to crib, and they found me next to a fisherwoman. And so there you are. And I keep saying that, I don't know how long I was there for half an hour, 2 hours, how long I was there next to a fisherwoman. But it certainly had a huge impact on my cricketing career, that particular period that I spent next to a fisherwoman. Because look at the number of times I was caught fishing outside the off stump.
I didn't see that coming. Although I am the bowler, I didn't see that coming. That was a nicely pitched up outswinger. Sunny Bhai, that's a wonderful, wonderful story, Sunny Bhai. We spoke about the pace quartet, the pace quartet that West Indies had, but we had our spin quartet, right? Can you sort of take me through the spin quartet, facing them in the nets? How did you go about it, and who was difficult to face? Who had the tenacity? Because we hear a lot of stories. There is a lot of romanticism around spin when you speak about Vishen Paji or Yerapalli Prasanna or Venkatragavan or B.S. Chandrasekhar for that matter. Can you take us through some of them?
Well, I think, they were magical. They're absolutely magical. And it was a privilege to play, alongside them, to, travel, on flights, spend evenings with them, sit down and discuss cricket with them. It was an absolutely magical time. And of all, I think for me, the most difficult one to play was Chandrasekhar. Right. Because, Chandra was one who could get the ball to turn sharply from leg to off. He had a googly. He had one that, rushed through at you. And he had like Anil, Anil Kumble used to get the ball to bounce off a leg. His delivery would bounce off a leg and hit you on the gloves. So he was difficult to play. Having said that, I think the guys who dismissed me most was probably Bishan Singh Bedi and Yerapalli Prasanna. And they were champions of flight. They were like literally, inviting you to come down. And it was also, you could see it was also planned. It was the first couple of deliveries were pretty easy. The flighting was such, the way the ball was pushed more towards you. So you thought, you can come down and hit them. And, you got a boundary, etc. And that's the thing about them, is that they did not mind being driven for boundaries. because they knew that they were sort of, weaving a web around the batsman, because eventually the flight would become marginally, lesser. The length would be also again marginally lesser, where you were stretching for it. And then you were getting, stranded because you had stepped down and yet you hadn't actually gotten to the pitch of the ball. The earlier one was like the earlier deliveries were like an optical illusion. So that was the magic of Bishan and Prasi.
What about somebody like a Venkat? They speak very highly of Verapalli Prasanna a lot. But what about someone like a Venkat? How different was he?
Venkat was a big-hearted bowler. Big-hearted bowler. And Venki probably didn't have the kind of flight that Prasi had, but he was very accurate, very, very accurate, very difficult to score off. And if there was anything in the surface, then he was virtually impossible to play. He made very good use of his height as well, and maybe that's the reason he didn't have to give the ball the air that Prasi had to give. But Venki, his heart must have been, I'm sorry, it's so big, it's unbelievable. When I say must have been, I'm talking about while we were playing. There was one match, Mumbai versus Tamil Nadu, Ranji Trophy match at the Wankhede Stadium. And Sandeep Patil straight drove Venki fiercely, and Sandeep could really power the ball. And he straight drove, and Venki, it was to his right, more towards, near the non-strike. And Venki in his follow-through just put his foot out to try and stop it. And the ball bounced a little bit more, so instead of hitting him on the boot, it hit him on the shin.
Oh.
And that shin had become as big as a balloon. But Venki didn't go off the field. He was there, right? He bowled because he was the captain. He knew he had the responsibility. He bowled right till the end. And at the end of the day's play, because the dressing rooms were next to each other, you saw him trying to apply some ice, and you could see it had become, it was as big as, as a balloon. It was that big, the swelling. But that's what I mean. Big-hearted cricketer.
Right. I want to draw an interesting analogy because this generation, Sunny Bhai, I mean, with all due respect to your generation and the middle generation that I have seen, is very different in terms of how they see things. They don't have a massive memory from the past. So if I have to jog your memory back and ask you to rate all those spinners to a modern day spinner, because they haven't played the T20 cricketer, cricket. Let's say if I say B.S. Chandrasekhar, who, because you've been watching cricket constantly, the T20 generation, can you equate B.S. Chandrasekhar with a modern day leg spinner?
Very tough, because, you must remember Chandra also had that a little handicap with his polio affected hand. And so, he threw left-handed from the deep.
Wow.
Only bowled right-handed. But otherwise, anything that came to him, he was always throwing left-handed. So, it's difficult because, and you could see when he walked, his hand sort of stayed by his side. Our hands, go side, but Chandra's hand, stayed to right hand stayed there. That's because of the handicap. And so it's difficult to compare somebody like him with any of the current spinners. Most of the current spinners, leg spinners, are those who will bowl a little, a slightly flatter line, not quite, tossing the ball up. But that is the modern way. So I mean, as long as they're successful, as long as they're getting wickets, I don't see any problems.
Right. You've just played the game in one of the most toughest times in terms of pitches and the bats. The bats weren't greatest. You were the first to get to 10,000 run mark. And if you happen to play with the modern day bats, I'm sure you'll make 5K more than what you had then. So asking you a question from there, and then you saw the sport, and now you're actually continuing to watch the next evolution. How would you rate the current scenario of pitches to when you guys were playing, and also the bats? How would they rank up for you?
I think the pitches have, changed as you would expect, because I think there are, and the circumstances, there are certain circumstances, certain compulsions that, have pitches changing. In the early days, it was more a question of making sure that, the match, there was no television income.
Right.
So it was important for a match to virtually go the 5 days. So you would get 5 days of cricket. So you had pitches which deteriorated gradually. So you had pitches which were very good to bat for the first 2 or 3 days, 2.5, 3 days, and then they started to take a bit of turn. So pitches in those days were where the ball came onto the bat quite nicely. But again, like I said, from days 3, 4, and 5, the spinner could come into play. Today, you often see that pitches turn from pretty early on. You often see pitches which have a lot of grass. If you have a seam-based attack, you see pitches which have a lot of grass, which we encountered quite a lot in England, New Zealand, and in Australia. So I think the only change really has been that the compulsions have changed. Because while earlier on, it was important for a match to go 5 days, it's no longer the case because your revenue is not so much crowd-based, your revenue is more TV-based. And so whether it's a 4-day game or a 3-day game, if a test match finishes in 3 or 3.5 or 4 days, it doesn't change the income for the cricket boards. So there's no compulsion to make the game go the full 5 days. As far as the bats are concerned, I think it's a massive improvement. And in the sense that, we had to put linseed oil and all that, break the bat in gradually and, make sure that, we wouldn't get bats, half a dozen bats. And the manufacturer would say, what do you want half a dozen bats for? So we had to make sure that the bats were really good and lasted us for the whole season. Now these bats, and again, over here, the R&D with the bat manufacturers is one of the reasons as well. They've been able to, get that curve of the bat, the way they, they make the bats today. So credit has to go to the bat manufacturers for the wonderful way that they're making these bats.
Right, Sunny Bhai, interesting that you spoke about bats because my first bat that I used, an English willow bat, I used to use Kashmir willow to start off, and then I started using a English willow bat, and it was Sunny Gold.
Okay.
The bats were named after you, Sunny Tony and Sunny Gold. How did that come about, Sunny Bhai? Can you just take us? It doesn't happen anymore now.
Well, I think, my equation and my relationship with the Anand family, who are the owners of SG Transparence Greenlands. And for a long time, people thought SG belonged to me. And I still
believe so. Isn't it that fact?
No. It's Transparence Greenlands. And my relationship with the family is very long. And we first started collaborating on making, gloves, because they were at that time not so much into cricket bats, but they were big, huge, supplying to all the overseas manufacturers. They were supplying soft leather, the leg guards and the gloves and all that. And I had in 1974, I had my right forefinger broken 3 times by being hit on the gloves. So with them, I manufactured a double padding, which absorbed the extra blow. And because, once you break a finger, often as sometimes even a light touch on it can break it again. So with that extra padding, that's how we started. And then when they went on to making the bats, that's where, because they named the bat after me, SG, and they took, the autograph bat. So it was a question of, he scores a ton, you score 100, you call it a ton. So I said, why don't you call it Sunny Tunny? That's how it started, Sunny Tunny. And it went for a long time. And then, when I finished playing cricket, I didn't pick up a bat. I didn't even feel like picking up a bat. And then about 3-4 years down the road, I was going for a holiday towards Mussoorie. And so while I was driving, I drove past their factory at Meerut. And Kailash, who along with, I think, Duncan Fernley, is probably the best bat manufacturer bat maker that I know. I'm sure there are, others also, but I mean, these two are in my book, the best bat makers in the business. So he had a new bat, in his office, and that was the Sunny Gold bat.
Right.
Yeah, Sunny Gold. And he said, have a look at this. This is something we are doing new. This is new. This is just out, and have a look. And that's the first time, and I think about 3 or 4 years after I quit playing the game, I picked the bat up, and I said to Kailash, this is the first time in 3 years I feel like batting again. So it was just that wonderful feel of that bat. So I think that's how we know each other for such a long time. So I guess, that relationship has been there.
Right. We've spoken about an integral part of a batsman, which is the bat, which they call your weapon. But your partner in crime, you had a few partners up at the top of the order, but notably two of them. One is Chris Srikanth and the other one's Chetan Chauhan. He's no more now, but these are your two opening partners that you've played with, and you had some extraordinary experiences with them. I want to know, between Cheeka and Chetan Chauhan, who is the better, not the player, better partner, and also tell us about your experiences with them. Both of them had some extraordinary experiences with you, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's Anshuman Gaekwad as well, another, big-hearted cricketer. So these three were the ones who were really, the guys that opened the batting quite a lot with. With Chetan, Chetan was senior to me. He had played for India, made his debut a couple of years before I had. And even in age, I think he was about 2 or 3 years. He was 2 or 3 years older than me. So clearly, I looked up to him to guide me. And he was therefore, when we started playing, when we started opening the batting, when he came back in the Indian team, by which time I had established myself in the Indian team, he was the one guy who would, when at the end of the over, when batsmen get together, he was the one who would tell me, look, you're playing outside the off stump, you're chasing deliveries outside the off stump, you're playing across the line, your concentration just going, just be a little, and or things like, this looks like being Imran's, last over, or this looks like being Malcolm's last over, so let's not do anything silly. Then, the lesser bowlers will come in. So these kind of things is what Chetan would be very good at. Because he was being senior to me, he would come and tell me that straight away. With Anshu also, the thing was, if I went to Anshu again was very, very open with, what he thought I was doing wrong. Particularly, playing across the line is something that Anshu would notice. He said, you're playing across the line, try and play straight, you're looking to play squarish. Those are the kind of things that Anshu would also do. But with Cheeka, it was completely different because, in those days, we never clicked bats at the end of over. Today, when you see batsmen clicking bats like that, we never did that. It was like it was shunned. It was frowned upon. At least in Mumbai cricket, it was frowned. Hey, you don't touch my bat, that kind of thing. But Cheeka would come and do that to the bat. And after some time, I realized that there is no point trying to hide my bat behind, because somehow for him, I think it was a bit of a lucky kind of thing, because he would reach from behind me and still touch my bat. So with Cheeka, it was a completely different experience. With Cheeka, I keep saying that Cheeka liberated me as a batsman. Liberated me because I saw him play. I saw how the crowd was relishing and enjoying what he was doing. And I said, even I must, play a lot more shots than I am doing. And by which time, of course, what had happened was India's batting had also become a lot more solid. We had a Mohinder Ramanath at 3. We had Dilip Sarkar, Sandeep Patil, Yashpal Sharma, to name that. And above all, we had Kapil Dev at 6 or 7. If you have somebody like Kapil Dev at 6 or 7, I mean, you could be 5 down for nothing, like we were at the World Cup in Zimbabwe, 17 for 5, and he got that 175. So you could do that even in Test cricket. He could change the game with his batting. So that allowed me at the top to try and take a few more chances and try and, play a few more shots. Earlier on, because it was pretty much, Vishy and me who had to score the runs for India to get to 300, 350. So that sort of, put a bit of a restriction on some of the shots that you would play. So like the square cut or the hook shot or some of the, I had to put them in cold storage because there was an element of risk involved in those shots. But, with Cheeka, like I said, I said, well, I stopped, looking at the risk element. I just looked at the fun element of playing their shots. And that's why I keep saying, the last 7 years of my cricket career, my consistency went down. But, I enjoyed the last 7 years a great deal more than the first, 7 years, first 8 years when I scored a lot more runs. But like I had about 20 hundreds in 50 test matches. But after that, the consistency went down because I was playing a lot more shots. But hey, I enjoyed myself a lot more then than I did in the first 20 hundreds.
Enjoyment factor is clearly very, very important. But there is a lot of folklore around the cricket when you guys were playing. We hear it because we don't get to see a lot because of the lack of footage. One such folklore happened in the Caribbean. In fact, I have heard a lot from my coaches in the earlier days, like Raman and all that. He told me that you are probably more popular in the Caribbean than you are in India. You have a song written after you. There's a calypso, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about some of the fare that you had in the Caribbean?
Well, I mean, that's why I keep saying that, Trinidad is like my second home because, that's where I made my debut. I have, I've enjoyed batting over there. The pitches have been absolutely terrific. And it's been, there's such, you've been there, there's a huge Indian origin population over there. So, you feel a lot at home. And that's where I think the Calypso happened after my first series there. And the thing about that is for 3 years after that, I had no idea that the Calypso had happened. Because, those days communication wasn't as easy as it is now. And so when we were playing in England in 1974, the 74 tour, and we were playing Hampshire, and Andy Roberts said to me, do you know there was a Calypso made on you in 1971? I said, no, I have no idea. He said, no, I think I'll go and see if I've got it. And he actually, in those days, there was something called a cassette player.
Right.
So on that cassette player, he actually gave me that Calypso, which was the first time I heard the Calypso. So I heard that Calypso 3 years after it had been made.
Right. Sunny Bhai, there is another interesting story spun around it, and that's why I started this off. I heard about, people making bets on the side in the games in the Caribbean, where they used to, say, let's say Gavaskar would make 100 or, an X would take 5-wicket hauls. And there was an incident. Is it true or it's not, or it's just a folklore? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. That was on another tour. And there was this person, and you probably haven't seen because sadly the crowds don't come as much as in the old days. And so the crowds used to be, absolutely packed. And the West Indians, loved their life. So the drinking would start at breakfast time. So, and would carry on, at the ground, etc. So by the time you came to the ground, a lot of them would be already pretty smashed. So there was this Indian who and as you know, there's an undercurrent of, tension between the Indians and the Africans over there. So that tension's always there. So this Indian said, my man is going to score more runs than both your openers put together.
That's what Greenwich and Haynes, right?
Yeah, that's what Haynes and Greenwich were the West Indies openers. And this is, it was like saying this is it. And, so India batted first and I was out for one. And so this fellow said, what? And he gave the money away to all the guys he had, who had taken bets with him. Give the $100 or whatever it is. We were dismissed before the end of the day's play. And so West Indies came in to bat. And from one end, I think Kapil got Greenwich out. And from the other end, Balwinder Sandhu got Desmond Haynes out. Both for zeros. Both for duck. So this man said, hello, I told you my man's going to score more runs than both your openers put together. Please, where's my money? Where's my money? But of course, by that time, people had already, gone. And I thought for a long time, I thought that this is one of these, these stories that come along till I had gone to Trinidad many years later to give the Sunny Ramadan lecture. And I mentioned this, that one of the reasons I love Trinidad is because, of the way, the people are. And the person who was giving the vote of thanks was the journalist and TV commentator called Fazir Muhammad, from who used to write for the Trinidad Guardian then. Sports reporter, cricket reporter. And he was to give the vote of thanks. And he said, Sunny, I can assure you that the story is absolutely true because that was my father who had lost the money.
Wow. Okay. That's one hell of a story, Sunny Bhai, because this can happen only in the Caribbean. Imagine somebody banking on Sunil Gavaskar to make 100 and he makes 1. And what are the odds that Greenwich and Haynes will get out for a 0? So this...
Unbelievable. Again, my first tour as well, I was fielding at deep third man. And Maurice Foster was batting on 99. And again, Foster this is at Trinidad, Queen's Park Oval. Foster is from Jamaica. There's an inter-island rivalry there, quite strong over there in the West Indies. So there's this guy saying, the Jamaican not scoring 100, man. The Jamaican not scoring 100. Not, he can't score 100. He can't score 100 here in Trinidad, man. He can't. So he started to say, what is the bet? And I was fielding a deep third, man. He kept asking me, what's the bet? I said, look, I'm not betting. My first over, what bloody mistake, I said, didn't you know what betting was? I said, no bet, nothing. So he said, okay, let me tell you one thing. If you score 100, I give you $100. And if you get out, you got to give me $1. Is that okay? I said, okay, fine, $1. And, a couple of deliveries later, Abid Ali gets Maurice Foster to chop the ball onto the stumps on 99. So it was tea time. I went and picked up $1 and I came and gave the dollar to the guy because that's ridiculous. He's on 99 and he's telling me he'll give me $100. Okay, 100 Trinidad dollars, but still ridiculous.
It can happen only in the Caribbean. Such fun-loving people. There's no doubt about it. Sunny Bhai, these stories have increasingly started coming down these days. I don't know, maybe because sometimes when you're in the process and the journey, you don't realize it. Has the game changed? You've become a broadcaster. You're watching the game with a far more wider lens right now. Has the game changed so much that this fun-oriented element of the game has just gone out of the window a little bit?
I would imagine it is because there is this false belief, in my view, that you have to, you have to be so tough that you mustn't appreciate the opponent.
Right.
And if you make a good shot, you mustn't appreciate. Bowler shouldn't applaud. Or if a batsman plays a really good, or if a bowler bowls a good delivery, the batsman shouldn't say well bowled. That lessens when batsmen reach a half century or a century. You see many teams, and I'm so happy that the Indian team is not one of them. Many teams with their hands behind their backs and not even applauding a 50 or 100. I mean, what does it take to applaud a 50 or 100? Does it make you that much tougher? That just by putting your hands behind your back, are you showing that you're so tough? But oh, so what? We're not going to applaud the 100. And an achievement is an achievement, and you've got to applaud it. So I think that has meant, to a great extent, that the mateship, the fraternization that used to take place between teams has lessened. Having said that, I feel that the IPL has been a huge plus in lessening the animosity between players now. Before IPL, the animosity was incredible. Right. It was just ridiculous. Now you have players from different countries sharing the same change room for playing for their franchise. You started to understand each other's cricketing cultures. You started to understand each other's approach. You started to understand each other just that little bit better. So often you tend to think, yeah, this guy is so and so. Sometimes an impression is formed. He's such a so and so. I hope he doesn't do well. I hope he doesn't. I hope he gets out for a 0. I hope he's clobbered for hundreds of runs. So that's the kind of thing that happens. But only when you come to know each other, that changes. And the IPL has been big. So when you're playing for your country, the intensity of your playing, of doing well, has not lessened. But the animosity against the opposition, where you would maybe try and swear and abuse, that has gone down considerably. It's probably there in very, very little, and sometimes when people can lose their temper, and that has been the big change. And sadly, it takes, I think, captains to sort of get together and try and sort it out. I know people tend to romanticize the old days and stuff like that, but we had a situation where the batting team would always, at the end of the day's play, take a crate of drinks, whether it was beer or soft drinks or something, and go into the fielding team's room and sit down with them for half an hour and chat. Could be about the day's play or whatever it is. But the next day again, you were at each other's throats with the bat and the ball. So, but in the evening, you could sort of get to know the guy who was actually having a go at you. You would find that he's actually such a nice guy. So I think, I'm not sure that happens too much nowadays.
Actually, I just wanted to mention this. On the recent tour of India tour of West Indies, Jason Holder was sweet enough to do the same. He offered us to share the dressing room. He was very open in terms of saying, "You got a lot more experience and a lot more class in the team. Can you share? Can you come and share a drink with us and all that?" It was kind of very sweet of him to do that. We quite enjoyed it. I sat with Rakeem Cornwall and had a good chat and all that. It was good
Wonderful.
fun.
Wonderful.
Sunny Bhai, so I mean, this has been one of the most exciting chats that I've ever had in this lockdown period or whatever. I can't leave without asking this question, Sunny Bhai. It's more of someone junior asking you a question, someone with so much experience and having played the game and watched the game. You've got an eye for criticism as well. Tell me what exactly spirit of cricket is, Sunny Bhai.
Very good question. Very good question. Well, I mean, the spirit of cricket is where you play the game. I mean, it's all, in unwritten, but you play the game with as hard as you can, but without looking to cheat and get an advantage. If you're out, you leave the crease. I know it doesn't happen, and I also have occasionally, not played the game the way I should have. But again, that has been against only one particular team. Against most other teams, I think I played the game with the spirit of in the spirit that it was supposed to be. And I think it is just a notion where you want to enjoy the sport. At the end of the day, even if it's your profession, if it's where you're earning your bread and butter, I still think there is plenty of room to play it in a fair way. You can play it hard, play it fair, as they say. But what is fairness? Fairness is trying to not take advantage of something which is completely wrong. And I think, or wrong, not completely, is wrong. And I think that is where things can change. I mean, if you've nicked the ball, you can go out. If you know that the batsman has nicked the ball and you don't appeal for an LBW. If you know that you've scooped the ball up, you don't appeal for it. Today you see fielders a few feet away from the ball. The ball has landed over the boundary, and they're still refusing to signal to the umpire. They're saying, "No, let the umpire do the job." Why? I mean, what is this? What it does, it just slows the game down because it's referred to the TV umpire. The TV umpire, by that time, so you've lost about a couple of minutes in that. The rhythm of the play has gone. I mean, at the end of the day, it is still going to be a 6 because it's going to be shown as 6. So why don't you say it's 6 if you've seen it? Or why don't you, say it's 4? Simple things like that will help this game to become better. And I believe that there's plenty of scope. I think, players like you who are role models should be the ones who should be starting to do that. I know you've taken a bit of flack with this browning of the non-striker.
Running out the non-striker.
Yeah, browning. In my view, I mean, you see, sadly, Ash, if I might say that, every time things like that have happened, I have not been on air. And I've actually said, I've actually written, I don't know whether you've read some of my columns where I've said that, okay, so if this happens next time around, if somebody claims a catch wrong, I'm going to take the name of a particular player who was famous for taking catches, and I'm going to say he's done that to him. I said, why do you malign an Indian legend? And it was an Aussie reporter who coined that term way back in 1947. Sir Don Bradman said there's nothing wrong. Yeah. The captain of the team said there's nothing wrong. But the reporter, we today must have our own sort of belief in ourselves. An Aussie reporter calls Harbhajan Singh Turbanator. He's never worn a turban on the field. How the hell does he become a Turbanator? So everybody calls him a Turbanator. Come on. You don't have to copy. You turn up and say, hang on a minute, he doesn't wear a turban on this thing. He's not a Turbanator. You call him Turbanator. We're not going to call him Turbanator. But that is the kind of thing that is lacking. That belief that, the players have it. I want everybody in India to have the belief that we are as good, if not better, than anybody else in the world.
Like after this, I mean, just sharing the thoughts, Sunny. After this incidents happened last year in the IPL, Murli Karthik called me, reached out, and Kapil Paji reached out and said, I hope you're okay, because I think you are on the right side and you're being vindicated here for something that's not your mistake. So my response was, I felt like I was on the right side, so I was not getting affected. But what it struck me was someone like Shane Warne, who went online on Twitter and said, this is disgraceful. Because I watched Shane Warne live on TV all along my life, loved his art, loved his way of deception, and he used to speak to the umpires and get a few decisions on his side. So I was really confused about what is spirit of cricket, what is right and what is wrong. So, I mean, this was a complete dilemma, and it's got a psychological effect on most cricketers, Sunny Bhai.
Yeah.
The bowlers are in a traumatic stage where they feel it's wrong, and if they did that, they will be traumatized. Is it even fair on the bowlers?
It is not at all. It is absolutely. I mean, look, today, your run-out decisions, which we see, are by millimeters. Right. So if the non-striker has got that advantage, so when he's completing his run, it could be a run-out. But because he's taken that advantage, he's home. So all the more reason that he has to leave only when the ball has left the bowler's hand. It's as simple as that. And again, this sledging or this talking to the opponents hardly ever happened. There was more of a banter, where you also laughed. If you were the subject of it, you laughed. Like for example, what have you had for breakfast today? Or why don't you go and buy a lottery ticket? You're so lucky. That kind of thing, you've been playing and missing, and then some bowler comes and says, go and buy a lottery ticket today. You're so lucky. Fine. You've been playing and missing. It's not offensive. It's not like, oh, you so and so, which came in, and again, like I said, was very, very prevalent till 2008, till IPL started, and after that, that has come down. That's the thing that I'm saying. That abusiveness has come down from 2008 IPL because the players of all the countries are mixing together, and that's one of the best things that IPL has done. More than anything else, I think that for me has been the best thing that IPL has done.
Right. Awesome, Sunny Bhai. I mean, that was quite a serious one to end, but I want to end it on a slightly lighter note. I want to know 3 cricketers that played alongside you that you rated the most, that you still continue to rate the best.
All over Indian or world cricketers?
Anywhere, Sunny Bhai. Anywhere. But you're not allowed to say Rohan Khanna.
Okay. Garfield Sobers.
Right.
Quite simply the greatest. Absolutely the greatest. I mean, he could do anything. He could, bat, bowl, keep wickets, bowl spin, bowl pace. Unbelievable. Absolutely. Played without a thigh pad. I mean, helmets were not there in those days, but he played without the thigh pad as well. He would be number one in my book. Then Gundappa Vishwanath.
Right.
Because, I mean, he made batting look so simple. He was, one of those rare cricketers who could hit a good ball for a boundary. And such a self-effacing person. So a lot of people don't actually talk about him. But when we played, I thought he was the best batsman in the world. Best batsman in the world. Because, come a tough situation, I mean, wish he would get 100. And, he's the only cricketer who's got 100, and India has not lost a game when he's got 100. He's got, I think, 1,500, but there have been, I think, about 8 or 9 wins in those 1,500s. And the other 6 have been, where India has managed to hold on to a draw.
Right.
So he would be number 2. And as far as number 3 is...
To interrupt there, Sunny Bhai, there is this on record. I'm saying my dad, they used to have a fight in their colony and this area where it was the Gavaskar club and the GRV club. I'm sure you're aware of it. And my father has written. My father's father was on the GRV club. I'm sorry for saying that now. I'm saying that because after all, he's your brother-in-law. So he's written a letter to him, and he's responded to that letter. He still has it cherished. And even now, when the friends get together, they fight about it till now. I keep telling them, you know what? There is so much more to fight about in cricket. Why are you still hung up? So those are the days. Now on for number 3.
Number 3, I think I'll go for Kapil Dev. Again, an impact player. And for India, so far, in my view, the only player who could win like Sir Garfield Sobers with both bat and ball. He could win you a match with the bat. He could win you a match with the ball. Supremely gifted, supremely talented, and a wonderful guy. So I think these 3 are the guys. I might have missed out on the odd one, so I hope they don't mind. But I enjoyed playing with some of the finest cricketers that I could have played with.
Quick
the spin quartet that you said, wonderful spin quartet, and also terrific guys. So I think there was Farooq Engineer, there was my captain Ajit Wadekar, my hero ML Jaisima, Salim Uncle Salim Durrani. I mean, I could go on. Guys, who I looked up to, senior to me, before me, the Vijay Manjrekars, the Paulie Umrigas. I could go on and on. But I'm blessed. I'm blessed to have played the game. I'm blessed to have had the opportunity to represent my country. And I'm blessed to be able to travel around the world, even now, to see the Indian cricket team do well. And I'm really sincerely telling you that I'm so proud of this Indian team for what they're doing. Because, often, you want the next generation to do what you could not do. At least I believe in that. So when I see a Virendra Sehwag, smash the first ball over cover for a boundary, I go, move. I couldn't do it. But for me, it was like when I see a Rohit Sharma do that in one-day cricket, cream the ball either along the ground or whatever. When I see Rohit, a Virat Kohli go down the pitch and punch the ball, Sachin, playing perfect straight drives, Rahul Dravid, the generations, and I used to feel so nice because they were doing what we couldn't do. And I just want you all to keep doing that, because with that, what you do is you're fulfilling our unfulfilled dreams and objectives. So all the best, and God bless you and the Indian team.
Thank you so much, Sunny Bhai. In fact, actually, I only believe the future generations are going to be even better than what we are right now. So
Exactly.
One final note, one piece of advice that you will give a modern day youngster aspiring to play the sport at the highest level.
What I would say to him is to play at the highest level.
Him or her.
I think what I would say to him is that, him or her, yes, don't take yourself too seriously. That's the most important thing. If you start to take yourself too seriously, then I think, your focus on your particular sport is going to go. Because then you're going to say, what am I? When you start to take yourself seriously, you're thinking of, how am I looking? How am I doing this? How am I this thing? Oh, if I say this, how will it appear? No, you just focus on what you got to do, and you'll be able to do it.
Right. Wonderful, Sunny Bhai, because this has been outstanding to say the least. I totally lived the journey in the past through you. Thank you so much for doing this and joining me on the show.
Pleasure. Thank you.